Imagine doing everything right with money for 40 years. Working, saving, avoiding mistakes. And then, right when you finally stop working, that same caution quietly starts working against you. Not in a dramatic way. No headlines, no alarms. Just a slow leak you don't notice until years later. This is the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. After retirement, playing it safe with money can become the riskiest move you make. Not because safety is bad, but because the system you're trying to be safe inside of has changed, and almost no one explains that part clearly. For decades, the rules were simple. Work hard, save consistently, avoid big risks, put money in conservative places when you're older, protect what you've built. That logic made sense. When life expectancy was shorter, inflation was tamer, and financial systems were simpler. But retirement today isn't a short finish line. It's often a 20 or 30-year financial journey inside a very different economic machine. And that's where the quiet danger starts, because the biggest threat after retirement usually isn't a market crash. It's time. Let's start with the instinct everyone has. You retire, you finally stop earning a paycheck, and your brain flips a switch. No more risks. So money moves into cash. Savings accounts, money market funds, maybe conservative bonds. It feels responsible, it feels calm, it feels like control. The numbers barely move, and that's the point. But here's the problem. Money that doesn't move still changes, just not in a way that shows up on your statement. Inflation doesn't knock, it doesn't announce itself. It just quietly rewrites prices around you. Groceries cost more, healthcare costs more, insurance creeps up, taxes shift. If inflation averages 3%, which sounds small, your purchasing power is cut almost in half over 24 years. Half. That means the safe dollar you protected at age 65 might only buy 50 cents worth of life at age 89. And that loss doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like things are just expensive now, which makes it much harder to fight. Now add longevity to the picture. Many retirement plans were built for a world where people lived into their early 70 seconds or 80 seconds. But living into your 90s is no longer rare, and that extra decade changes everything. Because the real risk isn't dying early, it's living long, while your money slowly loses relevance. This is where conservative strategies quietly crack. They protect the number on paper, but they don't protect what that number has to do over time. Here's the math. Most people never walk through. Let's say you retire with $1 million. You feel solid, responsible, prepared. You move most of it into low-risk assets, earning, say, 2%. Inflation runs at 3%. On paper, you're earning money. In reality, you're losing ground every single year, not catastrophically, but persistently. After 10 years, your lifestyle feels tighter. After 20, decisions feel constrained. After 30, options start disappearing. Not because you were reckless, but because you were too static in a dynamic system. And this is where the system itself matters. Modern financial systems are built around growth, not preservation. Governments run deficits. Central banks manage inflation, not eliminate it. Markets reward capital that participates, not capital that hides. So when retirees retreat entirely to safety, they step out of the very system that's shaping prices, wages, and returns. They become observers, paying the bill. There's another hidden risk here that rarely gets named: sequence risk. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. When you're working, market volatility doesn't hurt much. You're adding money. Time is on your side. After retirement, timing suddenly matters a lot. If markets drop early in retirement and you're forced to sell assets to fund living expenses, losses become permanent. So people react by avoiding markets entirely, which feels logical, until you realize that avoiding volatility also means avoiding recovery. The system doesn't reward inactivity. It just penalizes exposure without strategy. Now let's talk about bonds, because this is where many people believe they're being smart. Bonds feel safe, predictable, structured. But bonds have their own risks, especially in a world of rising rates and high debt. Bond prices fall when rates rise. Long-term bonds are especially sensitive, and inflation quietly eats fixed payments. So, a safe bond portfolio can lose value in two directions at once: price volatility and purchasing power. That's not safety. That's a different flavor of risk. Cash is even more deceptive. Cash feels like certainty. $1 is always $1. Except it isn't. Cash guarantees only one thing: that you will absorb the full impact of inflation. It's not neutral. It's a position. And over long retirements, it's often the most expensive one. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. Most retirement advice focuses on avoiding loss. But after retirement, the real challenge is sustaining function. Your money isn't just sitting there anymore. It has a job. It has to fund decades of spending, adapt to inflation, survive policy changes, respond to crises, and recover from downturns. That's not a safe job. It's a strategic one. This is why many retirees are shocked years later. They didn't splurge, they didn't gamble, they didn't make obvious mistakes. Yet somehow, things feel tighter than expected. They start asking questions like, why does this feel harder than it should? Why am I more cautious now than when I retired? Why does it feel like the system moved under my feet? Because it did. The irony is that some exposure to risk becomes protective over long periods. Not reckless risk, not speculation, but structured participation, assets that grow with the economy, income streams that adjust over time, diversification that absorbs shocks instead of hiding from them. This isn't about chasing returns. It's about staying connected to the system shaping your costs. Another layer people rarely talk about is policy risk. Taxes change. Healthcare rules change. Inflation targets shift. Debt levels influence decisions you don't control. Playing it safe assumes the rules stay stable. History suggests they don't. And when rules change, capital that's flexible adapts faster than capital that's frozen. There's a quiet psychological effect too. Extreme conservatism often leads to underspending early in retirement. People delay enjoyment just in case. Years pass, health changes, opportunities shrink, and then comes the cruel irony. Money outlives the life it was meant to support. That's not safety either. That's misalignment. Now, none of this means retirees should take big risks. That's the wrong takeaway. The real point is this: risk doesn't disappear just because you avoid markets. It changes form, and many safe strategies concentrate risk instead of reducing it. They pile it into inflation, longevity, policy shifts, lost opportunity, all risks that compound quietly. The smartest retirement strategies tend to do something counterintuitive. They accept measured uncertainty to reduce long-term vulnerability. They build income, not just balances. They diversify across systems, not just assets. They assume change instead of hoping for stability. They don't ask, how do I avoid risk? They ask, which risks am I willing to manage? And which ones scare me later? Because here's the truth. Most people never say out loud, after retirement, there is no risk-free option. There are only trade-offs. You're choosing which risks you want to live with. And playing it safe often means choosing the ones that are hardest to see and hardest to fix later. So the real question isn't whether safe, why is good or bad. It's this: in a system designed to move, inflate, and evolve, what does safe actually mean? And are you protecting your money? Or quietly exposing it to the one risk you can't get back once it's gone? Time,